O que é que disseste que era?
Or here, if anybody wants to get really comfortable. Yes. Oh, here's one there. Yeah, really, please feel free to explore. Oh, that's good. I think it's okay if we just start. Oh.
Olá, boa tarde. Obrigado pela vossa presença e obrigado ao Luís Nelson pela sua segunda presença nesta série da Minha História da Dança. É com muito gosto que temos tanta gente no auditório hoje. É de facto uma pessoa muito importante na nossa história, muito importante no desenvolvimento da dança contemporânea. Claro, estamos aqui com uma sala prática de pessoas entendidas, não estaria a dizer nada de bom. Também é muito importante naquilo que tem vindo a ser o conhecimento da dança que se tem feito na Europa dos anos 90 e do século passado, muito com um foco sobre o movimento interior, na chamada de atenção à percepção, à relação do corpo com o espaço, com os corpos humanos, com objetos. E também pensarmos em questões muito importantes como o que é que o corpo faz permanentemente a sobreviver, como é que se vê a dança, e pensar que o mecanismo da percepção é muito importante na dança, porque verdadeiramente nós não conseguimos separar o corpo da dança e das forças interiores que se tornam visíveis. E esse trabalho sobre uma visão que se constrói não apenas a partir do ver, dos olhos, mas também do corpo todo com a sua inteireza, é muito uma marca da Luísa, muito nos tem ensinado a nós, e é com muito gosto que aqui estamos, porque sendo uma pessoa também muito significativa na nossa história da dança, lembramos uma vez mais que a nossa comunidade, estes momentos de encontro são muito importantes, porque nós vivemos da transmissão também, da partilha, do encontro com os nossos pares e dos resultados e das consequências que daí vêm. Por isso é com muito respeito, muita curiosidade e também muito agradecimento que aqui estamos. Eu, particularmente, uma vez mais agradecido pela vossa presença. Thank you very much.
Obrigado.
Obrigado.
Obrigado. So I'm very touched to be asked to come and talk about something. One of my dear friends, many dear friends and colleagues that I haven't seen for a very long time. This is a kind of a return because I thought I had done one of these before 10 years ago, and it was a very different context. 10 years ago, it was a very different world. And so my idea of how is a life lived for a person who wants to dance, which I did. How was a life lived up until now? So it's kind of a memory of the present. So I had started my story looking at a seed from my own experience as a child, looking at a seed from there, and then I could recognize patterns which are very interesting to me. Patterns and maps and systems and how things exist inside, everything's existing inside deeper and deeper contexts. And I started the story then speaking about a disappearance in my life, a disappearance at the age of 11. My father disappeared. In a sense, he had an accident and died in the ocean, and nobody found him, and nobody spoke about that in my family. I mean, everybody was very sad, but nobody spoke about it to my brother and myself. And so there was a very potent construction that a child makes when there's such a sudden shift of presence to absence. And I built on that very quietly. It became my quiet work to explain to myself what is visible and what is invisible. With the question about visibility and invisibility. I was left to my own device, and I worked on that very hard. For about 20 years, I had this idea that I might bump into my father somewhere. I'm sorry. So until I was 31, at which point the thinking about it left me. I stopped even. I didn't dream about it, but I had been thinking about it. And I looked at my environment very directly to try and understand what was visible, what visibility was. And at the same time, around 31, I started naming my laboratories invisible forms. I had been working a lot with video, receiving and discovering vision, what it meant to me as an animal. And yeah, so I started naming my workshops or laboratories in visible forms without realizing this connection. It's so strong. So the Father kind of gave me a direction through this absence. So that's the way the story started. The last time I attempted to make well, I would call it a story. One's history of dance is very personal. Each of us has a history. But now, today, we're in such a turbulent time of change in our culture. And a lot of what has been underground, I'm speaking from the United States perspective, a lot of things that have been underground have been like catapulted. The compression of oppression has pushed a lot of previously invisible voices, I would say, because I'm gathering the change in my culture almost entirely through radio. So I'm bathing in voices of the oppressed people in the United States. I'm speaking directly about the Black Lives Matter movement, I mean the women's movement as well, but the coincidence of timing of COVID with the events of the murder of George Floyd caused a very, it was like the oral world, the auditory world just cracked open. And all of these voices that have been silenced came out. So I kind of experienced it more orally. And so this moment of surviving on the planet, which has been a big, a central metaphor for me in my dance life, has been how do I survive in a field, a dance field that doesn't have any porosity, it's not permeable, it doesn't admit me, it doesn't invite me, because my thinking was not so amenable to packaging and marketing. Because what I perceived as the environment around me was not friendly to my inability, really, lack of talent to package and market myself. I can make a next. I'll leave that subject. Let me say next. There's another flow that's very interesting that returns to me at this moment of change and the momentary change on the planet. Next. That one just blew up. Because I've been working with an amazing group of people for 7 days I've been here, or 5 days I've been here, a lot of my context is really about speaking to them who have given me so many, without even speaking, given me so many questions and reflections on now, in relation to being a foreigner and taking my work to foreign soils. I have not worked much in the US because I found it too difficult to find time. People don't have time there to study because we have to work. So you can only take very small tastes of different ideas, different approaches, different practices. And in general, everybody pieces something together. Everybody synthesizes their own, cultivates their own technique, their own way of continuing to dance. Oh, return. Just to set my time of coming out into the world was really the 60s, the middle 60s, and I was, coming out in the field from being in school, And that period was very unquestioning. It's something that shifted in the culture in my generation from middle teens and until 30 years old, and it had some invisible force that just lifted us and threw us out of our normal behaviors, and there was a very idealistic moment of finding new territory, making new families, leaving family. And I was very much part of the back to the land group of people. I wanted to leave New York City where I grew up immediately and go live on the land somewhere. And that actually is what happened. Because we were very young, I think we had very little perspective. Well, nobody knew what would happen. And it was kind of a giant improvisatory celebration with drugs and music, and we found ways of being together, living together in large groups of people. It was kind of a beehive mind. It was less of a collective mind than a beehive mind. We weren't even aware, I wasn't even aware of how many other people were doing the same thing. I only learned that recently. How it happened all over the country at once, with people not knowing that other people were doing it at the same time. Idealisms of self-empowerment, which was coming from the women's movement in the 60s, civil rights movement. Self-empowerment was a very, very central question for all of us in all aspects of what we were, how we were going to survive in this way. Just want to make a little shift to what this new one is, why it feels so the same and so different. Because this new one, this next one, has the same desires to empower, to to write our own story. But the collective has become much more important. There's something new about the collective and the community caring for itself. The community caring for itself. I could never have survived in the countryside without friends. No way that it would happen. I'm leaping to the immigrant story, because that was very also part of what happened internally in the U.S. So that those of us who went back to the land were really colonizing the rural communities where we moved. They were very, at first very welcoming, but soon also very clear that we had invaded their territory with our ideas and our idealism. And my family is immigrant. My grandparents came from, they were immigrants to the United States in the 1900s, 1910s. And so I have always identified as a very, very recent immigrant to the United States as second generation. Very strong sense of not having my feet on the ground. And very, very huge sense of invading the Native American land. When I moved to the countryside, that was very clear. So there's always a sense of instability that's part of, my life's work. Personally, just always both becoming grounded, but both grounded, and for me, the dance group grounding my body, and also being ready to move in any direction at any time. It's a curious, martial arts. Get a lot of truths to experience there. The more grounded you are, the more you're able to move in any direction. And but back to dance. So my sensation is the first visit I've made. This is the first time I've left my farm since I returned in March 2020 from Montpellier to the States, the first foray. And it feels quite amazing to come here, where I feel rather comfortable. I feel more comfortable in the Southern European cultures than in the rest of Europe. Delineating something about the survival process and how that informs the dance work that I have found to do.
You see that this is happening all over Earth, like this finding not beehives, but other shapes.
The collective, I have only experienced it on Zoom, being in contact with people on almost every continent together, and listening to, the question was, am I sensing this collective desire, focus in other places? Well, I haven't been any other place, but
Do you have any sense?
yes, but my sense is really from the miracle of Zoom. I can't say enough about that, but it has been incredible to both participate, but I do a lot of listening when I'm in a company of people from all of these places that have such urgencies. I mean, physical threats and urgencies, and yet they continue to dance and make festivals. It's quite amazing. Yes. So how does that happen in dance is a question I have. It's a very small field, really, because it has very little opportunities for people to deeply follow their heart and make work where they want to, and that's changing too. Yeah, really changing too. Particular animal with very particular desires, and that feels right. You know, that each that we can share some of these desires, the desire to cultivate a way to continue to dance. That's a very complicated to fulfill in our cultures. Or cultures that don't have folk dance, that don't have a lot of shared physical and rituals, other than in the countryside where we dig the gardens together, plant together, and celebrate that together. Thank you, Sophia, for asking the question. I really want to invite people to. I'm off in some crazy direction, and I have some ideas of showing some bits of work. I thought about talking about editing, which is what it's very much part of what all the work I've done, and how that became embodied, the whole concept of editing, starting from first the concept of composing for many, many years. And composing, my sense of composing was completely about how we compose ourselves, which is the inner organization. It becomes a channel for what we receive on the outside. So I spent more time looking at the more how we organize ourselves, and that how that allows us to perceive differently than we ordinarily do in our demanding daily lives. So starting from that idea of composition, which was brought to me through an aha of changing to working with video, from dancing to video, stopping dancing, and starting a new thing. This experience of becoming an I, which was not really my, I wasn't, I drew a little, but I never took a picture. I wasn't really into visual things. And the moving video camera, which was a part of the body, and the original affordable video camera was very, the camera that worked on your head, And it just had a simple little, and it separated Zoom, the desire to come forth from, and it separated focus, which is, I can't really say what I think that desire is, but we automatically do that. Your eyes automatically reach for a sharper picture. And when you start to lose your vision, you can like feel more of that physiological desire, but then you can, oh well, I've seen a lot in my life. Oh well, it looks interesting, fuzzy. I see less, I have to make less choices. And that's recent, more recent for me.
But you also said about the oral thing.
Yes,
And I've been sensing that there is something appearing with the sound. I'm very happy with it. That sound is a little bit more emerging. And when you talked about like your perception of what's going on for these 2 years, it's more about accompanying the emerging voices.
yes.
They're not all human.
Here's Sophia a little bit talking about, well, sound is my organizing principle, so I'm very sound oriented. So actually adding the visual, I did discover that I organized through my ears. My ears led me to move in any situation. And I'm a dancer who almost never works with music, but I'm very, I've kind of been fighting for letting movement speak for itself, but not exactly. Being able, like, the sound often does not enhance my ability to look and appreciate the details of movement in front of me. It takes over. So being able to start to allow myself and share with other people what the incredible musicality of any gesture, physical gesture, that's been very important. And the video, I also did discover very strongly that I organized through my ears, no matter what I was framing. But it's a discovery you can make. It's not a rule. It's just, it becomes possible when you isolate one sense from another, which the miracle of vision is that we can close our eyes. There's no other sense we can remove and explore. I mean, we can put something in our ears, but it's not as available because not only can I close my eyes, but I can open them again. So I don't have to take things out of my ears. So this exploration of the senses, which started from the relationship of, started from the question, what am I looking at when I'm looking at dance? Because I did not enjoy watching dance very much. From even a child, I didn't enjoy watching dance. There was very little I really grabbed me. I found fantastic inspiration from watching experimental theater artists, people moving in different ways, but not in these coded codes that I was able to see when I was a child. And also, I don't like to sit. I'm trying to make you all, invite you here to sit, but I don't like to sit for very long. So watching the packaging of dance, it has to be a certain length, and I have to sit for that long, and the pieces have to be this length, and all of those conditions were not, I really wanted to understand something for myself. Why do people like to sit and watch dance? And that it allowed me to kind of invert what looking at things was. And looking at dance, I could ask other people who also loved to dance, what are you looking at? When you're looking at this, what are you looking at? It's not even, looking at is about the language, what are you looking for, or what do you see? What do you like to watch? There are a lot of questions inside of it. By asking that question, it really led me much deeper into the dance. And the camera was a way you could really externalize, in some ways, objectify how you were looking at something. If you used the camera, how were you? And then you could look at it back. You could see it back immediately and get this feedback. Wow, I didn't realize I was looking at that. So it kind of created a learning model that was very satisfying to me. A learning model in which the feedback system was extremely evident. And it gave me choices, like, do I want to look at it back on her? It gave me more choices of reflection, and also, built another layer of desire when I go to see something. Another layer, I can play with my perception rather than be colonized by what's in front of me. I can be more playful with how I'm looking, and then it gives me something else I can see. Is learning games. Anyway, learning scores that I've made are also I made to feed me what I wanted to see. So, okay, so that's a survival question. Well, if I don't like to look at dance, why do I want to put something in front of people? So I always wanted to make dances that I thought I would like to see. And the most opportunity I had to do that was in the workshop system. To use my laboratories to entertain my aesthetic and create explorations that would make something arise for me, find ways to make this extreme beauty rise in front of my eyes and everybody else's. This ultimately led to shifting, I'm not so young, but my energy was fading for wanting to be on stages at all. But construct conditions in which everybody in the space is empowered to be a player, to be a director, and to be an observer, and all of the roles are clear, and all of them are constantly passing through the room, through the space, and And this is, this idea about an observatory, so we're in it. We're the subjects and we are the observers as well. So these are just some of the layers of survival strategies. And also realizing very clearly that I was always surrendering away from my, from achieving this aesthetic taste. Of course, we all know you just never quite, it's always becoming. You might see it a little bit on the, while you're making something, and then it's very slippery. But yet, it's the practice that becomes really the most important part of our lives. What are we practicing? Even if we're failing a lot of time. And that becomes evident as a collective and aesthetic game. But it's never in one of our aesthetics, to me, is our value system, what we think is important. And we get that through all our senses. We decide. That's important.
You split this artistic experience or aesthetical experience from your experience of living in the country. Do you think those are two different universes?
I don't think, I think they're the same. The question is, well, I would call it daily life. I chose to do 6 months on the farm, which is a period of time that we have a growing season. And the other 6 months, we have mountains of snow, and it's very eternal life. Unless you like to hike. Anyway, or ski. I don't do any of those things, and so I would travel to meet with people during the back and forth from the farm to Europe, overseas, to dance, to have these dialogues, to share work. Yeah, the practices that I found were very early when I moved to the countryside. We could be very lonely. You can be lonely anywhere, but being lonely in the countryside is kind of an oxymoron because you're surrounded by so much life. Even in the winter, you're surrounded by so much life, and even just I could spend endless amounts of time just watching the play of my attention. Just watching the play of my attention was so entertaining. And so that practice really got deeply incorporated into the dance practice, and that I share when I get the chance. They come from daily life, and they're imported into the dance experience, and then, they both inform each other. I discover on both ends.
There's another part of your editing work that has to do with writing.
Yes.
And manifesting the voices of dancers, dance makers.
Thank you. I left out many parts, but one really important part was because I left the city, I had a great desire to, that wasn't the only reason, but I started making a magazine with a colleague who was deeply involved with contact improvisation. And it started as a newsletter, but it developed very quickly into just being a container for the voices of dancers. and not critical writing, but really the voices of dancers. And there was a lot of new questions in the dance field in the early 70s. So there was a place that I was going to say what making the magazine afforded me was much more intimate contact with other dance artists that I would never ever see. I would never see their work. I would never bump into them. I decidedly would not like their work, and I would not want to see their work. But by having this chance to have a dialogue with them, whether it was an interview or something they wrote, wow, it opened up this, my idea of who dancers were. Just, I was deeply moved by the intelligence, the thinking that was behind these very conventional products. I mean, I was amazed. And so over the years, so my colleague and I became editors. We didn't know we would become editors, but we became editors, practicing editing. And that's 45 years that has persisted, but to be able to hold the writing and thinking of other people, and the job is to make it more visible. That's the editor's job, make what's there more visible. And it's the same with video editing. That job, you have material and then you look and you see what's interesting to you based on whatever intention. And then you try to reconstruct something that makes something visible that wouldn't otherwise be there. But the material exists first. I'm just saying video exists first. And I'll show you a little video because that's, so there's the video, there's the writing, and then eventually the composing really turned into real-time editing with the mind that there's no such thing as an empty space. That my experience of space is it's already, it's so full, it's so layered with memory. Not in my memory, when I project my imagination, or my imagination is projected back at me when facing an open space, empty space. But the memory of the materials that we use in the architecture, the memory of everything that happened in the room, in that room that with the containers. So these scores allowed me to, gave me the illusion, or allowed me to come to the illusion that I'm stepping in, I'm stepping into something, I don't know what it is, but I'm following. With all of my skills, I'm following what's there. And that what's there could be really stupid. It could be beautiful, it could be stupid, it could be violent, it could be boring, but it's already there. And once I enter a space, I take instructions through my senses of all of these signals. I don't put into language. I don't have to describe them with language. I just let my body respond or reflect. It's like something's, literally pushing. I just show a little video of that. I probably won't show much, but just because talking about editing, I have an early video I made, and I'll tell you the intention so you'll know what the material was that I had made. I wanted to, one of the delights of video was the possibility to to make something happen that I couldn't do. So use my own body, I wanted to suspend my body in space. And you'll see how naively this was done. And because you could do that now with the technology, now anybody could do that. You know, that little, you could just tell the computer to do it for you. In fact, probably program it to detect whenever you were near, you know. But the technology then was very physical, and the machines were very big, and you had to physically move the reels to find an edit point on two different machines. You had to set up the one you were copying from someplace, and you had to set up the other one where you wanted it to come, where you wanted to put something. So I took an improvisatory approach, as I love video also because it was a way to take control over the image, I thought, whereas in my dancing there was no control over the actual image. And because I didn't do set choreography in my later life, I like the idea that I could have control. So, but I contradicted myself by creating a score to make myself suspend myself. And the score was, I made a sound whenever I hit the top of my jump, so that I could edit by ear. But that was stupid. I needed to have made the sound before I jumped, because I was too late. So I had material that didn't have the signal. So I tried to, this is a little result of that. And I called it jump cut because it's kind of a pun, because a jump cut in film is kind of an awkward cut. It's not, it doesn't flow. It's usually this, it doesn't matter. I called it jump cut because it was jumping. So I'll turn it on, and you'll. I'll start it again.
Oh, now we can see.
We can start again now. Repeat.
Ding.
Go. Go. Go.
Jump, jump, jump. Very jumping shoes. The best. Ideas and
Which year was it?
79. Oops. Escape. Yeah. Yeah, there are so many different ways you could, so many different ways to make yourself dance. I mean, when it became the video experience of doing it, both shooting and editing, and then editing the way that I try to find ways to give me an experience of dancing. Well, this was the wish fulfillment way, or some of the idea came from that. It was a very long time I spent doing a lot of editing, not a very long time, not really, like 4 or 5 years. Not, but it very severely repatterned my movement. To be looking at to be both causing these flow redirections, hands, body touch, eyes, making choices. I really changed my physicality, the way my body thought. And that was very interesting. That was an interesting, it was an unpredicted cultivation of it, another way of moving. And maybe I can show you a little bit many years later, a dancing moment. I had made a dance that just related to my visual activity and my breathing. That was the score for the kind of creating a compression between people in the workshop and a little what I'm saying about the visual activity, which is a lot of moving parts and a lot of attentional shifts, like the difference between looking at or watching or seeing those tunings of attention, and also the mechanics, the movement of possibilities. And not just at the eyeball, but at the lens, and a lot of moving parts, so I just threw them all into one exploration. I'm remembering. I'm forgetting. Oh, I'm remembering. They had to teach me how to use a PC, because I don't know them very well. I'm in maths. Okay, I was going to show an excerpt. So I made this dance in 1981, the solo, and in 2014, someone invited me to do it. So I got just working with the relationship of the activity. It's very funny. People, when they look at the video screen, they to scroll, they go the opposite way. But when I scroll, when I want to see something go up, I pull it down. That makes sense to me. I don't know why. Maybe it's that I think I'm pulling down the screen, like a window screen. And the other way, everybody says it's so much more logical to go, with the image. But I think so. Okay, sorry. It's been a while. I keep scrolling in the wrong direction. And it's called this return to the original dance I called Dodo, and actually it had meant to be do period. They're kind of interesting in action, and it was in Italy, and they just left off. And then I realized it was the extinct bird, which I thought was absolutely right for this reach. This reach into another layer of animal and extinct. Okay, so this is almost,
Yeah, pause for the
okay. Jump. You can turn it. Jump. Try it. Try to jump.
How do you feel to watch now? Yes.
Oh, watching the stuff, you can that sometimes I'm, really surprised because I don't watch myself very often. So it's try to imagine. But I also have a long, I have images captured from earlier, from the 70s. So then there's a comparison that's quite shocking. But what I realized, not because of watching, but I realized a bit because of re-seeing dance performance on video. That the amount of energy I had when I was in my 20s and 30s was so big that I had to find ways of causing accidents. And find ways of causing accidents, and so I used a lot more energy. And certainly by that time, I couldn't use any of those strategies. I couldn't use any of the strategies that I had cultivated. They just, causing an accident really was about redirecting at anticipated times. So I could still play with myself as an instrument. As an idea of playing my instrument, even though it was a new instrument. But so I could. I don't really, anybody wants to, I don't know what time it is, but I feel like I've been talking a while. If people wanted to ask any questions, I have only, but currently I'm working on a video editing program, just to bring this around more now. My wish since the early years of working with video was to have the video in my hands, in the sense that I could re-dance, not me dancing, like even pigs in the field, but to re-dance, dance I perceive in my hands. Because I get a very strong kinesthetic thrill, and it's almost like I'm touching the movement. So putting that together with the ability to make a program in real time for real-time editing, rather than the laborious process that we all love of editing. In another way, I can show you just a little, just a taste of, this is not a finished, had made, recorded some live playing, but this just shows the first time and the only time I had in my hands, instead of a computer with a trackpad where I could move the image with my fingers, I had a what do you call it? Phone. Yes, it had a phone. So we had programmed it to work, to be able to do the very simple operations, forward, backward, fast, slow, loops. Very simple. Forward, loops, very repeat. You can make your own repeats, of course.
With the movements of the phone.
With the movement of the phone. And
one is filming it, did you add?
no, it's pre-filmed. I'm talking about already filmed, already captured video, recorded video. So it's here Okay,
PC somewhere.
it's here. Oh, yeah, yeah, it's not coming on.
The sound.
Pause.
It's not coming on when I double click. Oh, how do you do it? Okay, okay. Thank you. So I'm going to go into this a bit. This very short little. Am I in the way? This is just, many different kinds of clips, experience, desire of editing or. That was wonderful.
She's dancing a doodle dance.
That's what I need. It all comes full circle. The visual. Let me move ahead. This is a beautiful dancer. Jennifer Monson. Her name. It's a little hard to see. I'll show you something easier to see. Jennifer Monson. So yeah, I could get inside her skin. It is very hard to know who's doing it. Okay, the sound could be louder. Okay. So this is. And then Ollie, I can't remember his last name, on the beach. And it's the sound of the ocean.
So you don't push any buttons. It's not.
No.
Nice.
Although I don't know how I made loops, there must have been a button I could press. It's the only time I tried it. Oh no, I made loops by reverse. Bit of playing on the trackpad.
And you can do it only with the recorded
Yes.
material from what you did, or you could do it with old movies like My Parents.
Everything.
Okay.
I can't show you, but I mean, with so many, the animals, fantastic, animals, everything. Anything, really.
Does it have a name?
And you can put it up, you can record it, so if you wanted to edit it later. The name, we haven't quite made the name. Anybody have a suggestion? Yeah, it's been really ready for about 2 years more or more, but it's been really hard to make it a standalone. This was made with Isadora. The program was made. It has many other, besides loops, and you could do a lot of movement analysis. If you wanted, you could move a loop by tiny increments. You could, oh, there are a lot of other things. You can do 2 screens with 2 different images. You could do superpositions. It's a playland. Yeah, getting the technology has been hard. We've been through 3 totally different programmers with failures at a certain point. So we're working on it. Hopefully by this coming year, it will be available. Because it's a great tool for movement, looking at film, incredible for both. And then, yeah, I like that it's real time. Anyway,
It's better than Reels.
huh?
It's better than Reels, the Instagram Reels.
Oh, yeah, which I had no experience. I've been very surprised over all of these decades that nobody has made such a program.
It's incredible, the kinetic receptors and your extended body, watching you
Yes,
move
that's
the image, there's this beautiful.
and even though that was really exciting also because I'd never done it before, so I didn't really know how it works, but it's the feedback system is so remarkable. You make a move, of course, and you're looking at it. But I was just wild, just I like to play wild, and then I can get it to really good. Yeah. Do we have any questions? Is there time for comments or any? I have no idea what time it is.
8:05.
Oh. Yeah, so we have a little time. If somebody wants.
15 minutes.
I have one question.
Then,
One question. How do you think that video, after you started working with video, is changing the way that you move?
well, I was able to, but I'm watching so much that I didn't show much of the fast cutting. Didn't show an example of exploring flow by cutting it into little pieces. Yeah, I had an interest. It was really about the activity because I was looking at 2 screens, televisions. I was starting one machine and waiting to hit the button, very hard to hit the button. I had a kind of a physicalized, it was like an attention storm. And what happened in my body and my movement was I actually did such fast cuts, with no effort, just shifting from one inner image to another. So that wasn't robotic, it just was surprising. And I didn't use that all the time because it was odd. But, yeah. I talked about, really, our eyes, we get so programmed, and so automatic about what we look at and how we look at it, but also just what we look at, because we're programmed for that, for survival. We imitate everything we see, starting from pretty much as soon as we come out, as soon as we appear. So that I really regretted a lot of things I spent a lot of time looking at. I was trying to figure out why I didn't like them, but they also influenced, my organization, so it made it even harder to find other pathways. But I was interested. It was a particular interest of mine about the details of movement. Wasn't very big. It didn't go on big stages. It was intimate to look at. What were you? Did you want to?
It flew out the window.
Oh, wait, flew out the window, maybe you'll come
It's
back.
next to the other.
Yes. The other one came back.
I was wondering if it's possible for you to connect the editing back to the visible and the invisible that you started with.
Yeah.
Pause.
I'm having fun. Sustain. Think about that. Question? Yeah. Somebody did. Go over here.
Okay. Close to the question, editing and presence.
Presence.
Present tense.
Real-time editing. Yes. No.
Real time and or editing comes from something you practice with real time. Maybe that it's.
Yeah. Well, I feel like I'm real-time editing all day long. Yeah, that's really what I'm deciding what is important to notice. Cutting things away, and I'm making relationships, I'm patching them, bringing them close together. I really think that's it. As daily an activity as improvising is. It's just the way we survive. And so in the dancing, really the term of it really functioned more in terms of working in a group. It became so useful to have that as an activity, and we make something together, but actually I don't know what's making it, because we're all editing simultaneously, and sometimes we voice our desire, and sometimes we just put our desire with our bodies into the space, and in two different ways. It is very interesting, a wonderful call, a reduced call, if you address the room and you ask it to reduce a room or an image, you ask it to reduce, then there's a moment for everybody to consider whether they're extra or not. And then they decide they are, they can exit, and then there's something left. Hopefully, there's something left, on your plate. But it's kind of being able to look at both sides of what the image contains. The image, the space contains.
It's just my mind. Now seeing this process of how the editing influenced your dance. And suddenly it crossed my mind that maybe this editing also influenced your talk. Since I know Lisa since quite a while, since more than 20 years. And I appreciate a lot the way you talk. You talk in a very particular way. With also these breaks and these things also that come and go and so on and so on, which is not something of now, of today, or it's from
It's an ongoing, lifetime.
Practice.
And indeed, it produces also a very interesting way of talking, which is for sure a very interesting way of thinking and so on. So maybe we can say that this editing work of yours also produced your thinking and so on and so on.
Reflections of each other, yeah.
And if the editing influenced your dance in this very cut way, and in this not going way or something like that, not flowing anyway, or resisting and things like that, then maybe it did the same to your thoughts and to your talk. And I think it's as necessary in the thought and in the talk as it is and it was in the dance.
Thank you. It never flows.
Me neither, it just crossed me through the
But I would invert it a little bit because the talking isn't, I didn't talk until I was about 19. So I have a very cultivated connection between my thinking and my tongue. It's not ever been there. And then I love to talk, yes. But in a situation where, like this, or often even in the workshop. I think words matter, but maybe I think they matter so much because it's been so hard for me to get it from here to here. It's hard to know which way it goes. Please.
But in the workshop this week, there was someone saying, "Wow, it was so easy to translate because we do everything on both English and Portuguese, and the translators were like, he says it's easy to translate." How is it possible?
That is so hard in the workshop. I'm so glad we're not doing it now.
You never talked until you were 19?
Well, I did talk. I talked to my family and I talked to my friends. but I didn't talk to anybody I didn't know. I hardly could talk to my relatives. I was very shy to talk. Really, really one of those shy kids. And I learned to talk when I quit college. I quit college at 19, and it's just, I observed conversation. They should teach conversation in school. I observed people talking to one another like, and I thought, what are they doing? Why does she say something and then they say something and then they stop and they say something? How does it go beyond, hi, how are you? I'm fine. How does it go? What comes next? So I really examined conversation. And I think that first started coming out of it by being able to ask questions. I got that technique, that strategy of how to keep a conversation, that I could ask questions. I still do that. But I really want to know, that's the difference. So this the connectivity between thinking and this thing, so there's a lot of Bonnie Bainbridge going and say a lot about that connection in the tongue. And the other thing is, I've talked about my work meaning in workshops, almost the first 25 years only through translators. Because the first years of coming to, decades of coming to Europe, no one spoke English except for the English. You know, I didn't go there that often. In Holland, that was it. So at any other country, it was done through translation. So these short, I looked for Latin-based words that didn't help in German, but it helped in, Italy and France, if I could. So I started to use much more Latin-based words, making it easier to translate. And I was learning, to listen to the other languages, so I could check the translation. But if I taught in English, I would be much more, I would say a lot more. Just little things, side things, and I edit them out. I really want to say some things. Edit them out.
I think I have a question about one of those words, since now you don't have to translate. Actually about two. One that you use sometime during the workshop, it's antidote.
Antidote.
Yeah, and I just felt like was just popping up while you were talking today.
Yes.
And the other word was more related to the beginning of your talk and the historical context to describe the beat. And this other word is disobedience.
Oh.
Yeah. And it's just if it inspires you to say something about them.
Right.
And if not, I'm also fine with it.
No, I like hearing the word disobedience. I don't think I've ever said it in my life.
Yeah.
Did I say?
I never heard it said.
No.
No, you did.
Now I have. Yeah, I had a nice conversation with somebody else today about antidote in the workshop. But I just gave a very, I gave a physical description of how if you cause muscle fatigue, by using very high tone and you sustain it, this is an easy way to look at it, for a long time, and then you release it, your body will automatically go unravel it, will go to its next. It'll go by itself. It'll create the antidote, muscularly, a muscular antidote to a muscular organization, extreme muscular organization. It's one way of antidote. Or when I'm dancing with somebody very intimately for a long time, passing a lot of stuff through touch in any way, there has to be some time to just let it roll out of the body. I call that an antidote dance or an after image. There are different ways of thinking, but I notice when we're playing, that there are many levels you could look for the consequences of actions. Consequences are always there. And sometimes they're an antidote. They're inevitable in terms of some physical laws or biological truths. They'll be what comes next because the body and the group is always trying to rebalance.
Can you add the word tuning?
Oh, the word tuning. Yeah.
Never heard it.
It was a very opportunistic word to use because tuning came to mind when I had to kind of call this approach and all these practices something. Tuning came to mind because it's happening all the time. So practice can be anywhere, anytime, but also it's everything. It's how we bring two things into relationship. It's how we do it. And it doesn't happen out there that we tune in the relationship to ourselves, to the environment. And so it's a constant, very simple, general term for these physical practices and group communication practices.
Do you know what the tuning scores are an antidote to?
No, tell me.
Do you think it has a relationship with the visible and invisible question? I have
I know there's something about adaptation something about adaptation that's been very much part of my journey in my life and probably many people's. And it's very important now, not just with COVID, but with, I'm going all the way back to what's really important right now is this change of thinking, this very major rewiring of our thinking in terms of our position, our responsibility, our collusion with the state of our world, our political worlds, our social world. So that is this adaptivity. It's a good word for the moment. How quickly we need to, we need to do this work to re-educate ourselves.
But do you think that's why you use more the word surviving than living? I don't know, I was just thinking about that.
Yeah, I missed the last word, but survive.
But do you think maybe it's because why it's more surviving than living? I don't know, I was curious
You
about
know,
You use more the
Survival.
surviving instead of living.
living. Oh. Oh, thank you. Wait. Pause.
Because I think it's quite interesting because speaking about politics, and I don't know, youth urgency, of, I don't know, this, or even struggling issues, but can be, I don't know, can be also living, I don't know, is there any difference? It's not, you know, like,
When you put the two words together, like surviving living is, I think, what I've been doing for a long time. But I think that, yeah, they're surviving well. And what's been more my interest I've been better able to explore my my animal strategies, and my psychological human strategies. I've been much more able to look at these fabulous survival strategies that we all somehow have survived on. I mean, with all of the things each of us have lived through, adapted to, that we're sitting here in this room together is quite a miracle, I think, of success with our animal survival strategies. So, and then, yeah, it's up to each of us to decide whether we're surviving well enough. Good question.
And
We'd like to go and thank you.
Só deixar a nota que acho que algumas pessoas já retiraram, mas estão ali uns livros, que é um texto da Lisa Nelson traduzido pelo grupo PEPCC. Se quiserem podem levar.